the blockage for the improviser is always searching for the best. Like, I want to top it. I want to have the best laugh. But instead, we should kind of be ordinary and just take the things that are here and transform something. Sometimes your own beliefs stand in your way, and then it's hard to remember your story as well when you let everybody else shine. So it's so good if you are surrounded and creative space is that space for me at the moment. Sometimes it hurts. It hurts to screw up and to accept it. So this is where also acceptance and commitment therapy comes in, like the ACT from my work. Where you use it to really diffuse from the situation and accept it.
You just got a small taste of my conversation with Andrea Wodniok, and there's a lot more where that came from. Andrea and I get into what improv can teach you about how to show up in business, why screw up happy isn't just some cute catchphrase, and we talk about what it really takes to rebuild your identity from scratch when you move to a new country. This is Unfiltered Solopreneur. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to a new episode of Unfiltered Solopreneur. I'm your host, Nikhil. My next guest is a jazz singing, prison theater directing creative force who helps people get out of their heads, screw up happily, and step back into their own story. Andrea, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nikhil, and I'm glad to be here.
I'm excited for our conversation. So I like to dive right in. So I want to start with, before Switch Impulse, before the workshops, before coaching, you were this young social work student who walked into a women's prison to do theater, right? Now that's a pretty heavy room to step into in your early 20s or even teens. What did that teach you about people that no classroom ever could?
That's a good question. And I like diving in deep. Yeah. So stepping into this world I've never experienced before was amazing, exciting for me as a student and in social work. And connecting it with theatre gave it a very different story, very, very different perspective onto it. So, and then also to have these experiences with the woman, and doing a theatre play with them together was very, mind changing, I would say, to see that everyone has their unique story, but we're all connected because we are all human beings. And I can give you an example with that because we paired into duos, and I had to interview one lady and she interviewed me. And then we took this information and created a scene or a theatre play with it. And then we decided, because our stories were very similar to one point. We had a very safe and happy childhood. And in a kind of way also, religion was very big in our story. And then she went the other way and I went another way. And but then to see also that connection, and it can happen so easily that the pivots are there in each story. Yeah. And to be together on stage, and then also to not be aware whose story is whom. So that was very nice to play around with it, and the audience left with question marks. So that was nice.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I mean, at least in the US here, I know we sort of dehumanize people in prison, right? It's interesting you talked about it because they had a life before that, and they tend to get defined only by that one action, right? Once you're in prison and nothing
That's right.
else. So it's really interesting that, when you talk about the
Yeah.
fact that you both had similar paths up to a point,
Yes.
but we don't sort of think of it that way, right? When we think of somebody
That's
who's
right.
in prison. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then again, I mean, we didn't hold contact after that. And
Right.
I think that's also a very reasonable fact, that you don't want to think of the prison time, kind of what happens in prison, it stays in the prison. And for me as a student and a young student, I was kind of sad not to keep in touch with this person. But then later on I could really understand why. And so that's also just a chapter of her life. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and plus we don't we tend, at least again here, I don't know about Germany, but it's less reform driven, it's more punishment minded, in terms of the fact that even after they've served their time, they're still
Hmm.
punished by society for a very long
Yes,
time, not being given jobs and not being given another
that's right.
opportunity to, to uh
Yeah,
to become, productive members of society again. So
yeah.
yeah.
That's the real punishment actually happening afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
that's
so
right.
I want to move to the next chapter. Now, you told me early on, you basically, you had a job in a structured kindergarten environment, right?
Hmm.
One where you'd end up hiding in the bathroom crying because
Mm,
it felt like a cage, right? Now, a lot of
hmm.
solopreneurs flee that kind of cage, only to
Mm,
find that being your own boss is a very different
hmm.
kind of pressure, right? So what
Mm,
was the hardest part of stepping out of the structure and realizing, now I have to build the floor that I'm standing on?
mm. Very good question. Um, well, because I've been self-employed solopreneur for such a long time,
Yeah.
um, and also focusing on theatre and theatre workshops and theatre plays, theatre projects, and being in a world surrounded by different solopreneurs and following their passion, following the art. I think that was very encouraging and showing me a different perspective. I think many of the listeners who are artists can relate to that. But then again, also to have these kind of worries and not being in a safe environment, kind of, because when you're employed, then you don't have to think of so many other things that you have to do when you're self-employed. In Germany, uh, when you are in this kind of system, when you are employed, then it gives you safety. But I always felt kind of, as I said, as it, being in a cage
Yeah.
and couldn't express myself and be the person who I want to be and be also valued the same way that I see myself. Um, I'm not kind of that person. I think I wouldn't describe myself as being the loudest in the room. And so sometimes it's also very difficult and challenging in these environments where you have to be a certain way, um, where you don't feel comfortable and can't be vulnerable. Um, yeah, then that's easier perhaps for me to do that. When I'm self-employed, then I can also say no to kind of, yeah, different workshops or works, job offers or something. Yeah, like that.
Yeah. I don't think we talk about that enough, right? I mean, there are trade-offs on both
Yeah.
sides of that fence, right?
Yes.
We either vilify the corporate world too much, I feel, or we
Yeah.
glorify the solopreneur world too much, right? And
Yes.
ultimately there's a balance, and you have to make choices, right? And difficult
Yeah.
choices. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with having a steady paycheck, but it comes with
No.
those handcuffs and the cage, like you described. And it's not for
Yeah.
everyone, but some people like the structure, some people like the certainty, and then I think it's just, I'm still trying to figure out whether it's nature or nurture. I don't think there's this is my 81st interview, I think, and I still don't know whether solopreneurs are
Good to know.
born, they're made, or
Yeah.
they're sort of pushed into solopreneurship, right? So, and maybe it's
Mm.
a little bit of all those three things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. I always, catch myself thinking that kind of, would I be better, better off if I would be employed? But then again, also reminding myself of these times where I felt in the cage and not expressing my true self and honoring that and finding that more valuable. That is also taking courage and also to show that to the world that you, yeah, choose this way instead of the employment. Yeah.
Yeah, and it brings a different set of challenges, right? I mean, I feel like I
Yeah.
always wanted to be a solopreneur. I started my first business maybe when I was like 6 years old, and
Wow.
but I just never had the courage because I was brought up in a family where there was a traditional path, and you got a
Um,
job and that's what you did, and there was no alternative to that. So for a
mhm,
long time, I sort of, I walked that path, even if it
mhm,
didn't necessarily feel like it was mine. So till I reached a point where I just couldn't anymore. Like you, I just
Yeah.
felt so trapped
Yeah.
and so, suffocated by the system.
Yeah. And I think because it was connected to social work and human beings,
Yeah.
small little human beings, I was kind of thinking or overthinking in that these moments. Is it, yeah, kind of, there are so many ways you can work in social work or have the education. And if the company says you have to do it this way, only this way, and don't think different or do it the alternative road, then yeah, perhaps I sometimes think of perhaps it would be interesting to do another company, kind of a different perspective. And I'm glad I'm a mom of two kids and I experienced luckily different styles of education in kindergarten and school where there's more variety, diversity, and not only this one way of thinking. So
Yeah.
that's very good to know as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it also yeah, if you want to touch people, then you want to do that on a broader spectrum, right? Than maybe
Yeah.
through one corporate
Yes,
lens. I get that.
that's right. And I
So,
always like think
mm,
that way also when I work. Then I try to open myself up to different kinds of perspectives and learn from each other instead of always doing it my way. Because that's how we grow. That's how we learn from each other and yeah, create magical things together.
yeah, that's true. I mean, so many people, I know people just sort of say that, but it's through discomfort that you grow, right? Otherwise,
Yeah.
stay too comfortable, then you're not really,
Yeah.
pushing yourself out of your boundaries or your
Yeah.
safe spaces. So I think that's
Yeah.
important. 2.5 years ago, you packed up your family and moved from Germany to Ireland, right? And I think you mentioned you called it a real life hero's journey for yourself. But you didn't just move countries; you left behind a 15-year professional career, a network, that, and you had to start all over and again in Galloway. So,
Mhm.
what were some of the things you didn't actually, consciously realize you were leaving behind until you had to start over?
Yeah. Um, yeah, the contacts and the
Yeah.
network I've built up so far. The friends, because yeah, they're not only contacts, because when you know each other for such a long time, like 10 years sometimes or 5 years, then there's also a relationship that yeah, that you have built up and then you not lose them, but it's different. I try still to connect with Germany and fly over and give workshops there. But then again, also the difference between time zones, but also funding is cut and everything. So it's sometimes very challenging to yeah keep in touch and to hold those contacts. But this is the biggest thing I think that I miss or that I just realize. Oh, okay, it takes time to build up a network and so it will also take time for me here now in Galway. Um, and I also try to build up a network online, but that's a completely different story.
Yes.
So yeah, as you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess in in a lot of ways, it's a lot harder as a solopreneur, right? Because you don't have, when
Mm,
you move with a corporate job, sure, it's new, sure, it's different, but you
yeah,
still have the network, right? That you had
yeah,
before. Whereas as a solopreneur, you really have to start from scratch in a new market because you're also an unknown
absolutely.
quantity, right? And you have to sort of
That's
prove
right.
yourself again. And I'm sure there are cultural differences between Ireland and Germany too that you have
Oh
to
yes.
take into
Yeah,
consideration as you build out your work and your engagements. And then, as
yeah,
you said, be growing a network is tough.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it still is. And I think I've never felt in Germany kind of that way that I say, yes, I'm fully connected and I have a successful business. It was always kind of how does it fit also with my life situation now, being a mum, having a family, wanting to also be there for them, and also taking breaks in between, and then continuing my work and holding those relationships and contacts close so that you have work and that you can do what you love. And also finding my way and finding my voice again through
Yeah.
these scenarios. Yeah,
And so do you feel like it's pushed you into new spaces? As in, have you reevaluated
absolutely.
your work as a result of the move in ways you didn't expect?
Yes, I think so. Completely. Yeah. And the hero's journey helped me a lot of
Yeah.
seeing that through a story lens instead of seeing myself as a failure or punishing myself or judging. No, just to see it as a part of the next chapter, a storyline, a story arc. And yeah, the growth mindset was very, very, um, very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to put the building blocks in place again, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's sort of like it's just
that's
the
right.
nature of the beast. It's not a good or bad thing, as in it's not something you have
No.
control over either. So yeah, it's and,
Yeah.
and you have to sort of that's what I love about the hero's journey, right? Especially for a solopreneur, I think it's a really valuable tool to
Mm,
evaluate sort of the phases rather than just because it's very easy to sort of in your own
yeah.
head decide you failed if you haven't gotten traction, you haven't gotten this, you haven't sort of
Yeah.
been able to move the needle on certain things. But things
Yeah.
just take time, and they're a lot harder when you're one person.
Oh, absolutely. The imposter is so much bigger.
Yeah, true,
Yeah.
true. One of my
Yeah.
guests called it the imposter monster, which I always loved.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good. No,
So
absolutely.
I want to shift gears a little bit to brand building and marketing now. So I love how you combine multiple tools, right? You have applied improv, ACT, the hero's journey, but that's also a lot of terminology. So when you're
Mm.
talking to a busy corporate executive or a stressed out professional, how do you explain what you do without getting bogged down in the names of some of these modalities?
Oh, that's, yeah, always challenging. And I'm still trying out. And to be honest, there's no right or wrong. I think everyone
Mm.
has to try out several times and to find their words, and building the relationship through these connections that I've built up 15 years now in Germany and starting now in Galway. It's all about the relationship and letting the other person tell their story and connect it to their story. So that was my kind of insight and mantra that I always have for myself. Yeah.
Yeah,
Instead of trying to figure out it from this perspective, or do I sound more academic? Do I sound more smart this way or something? And then the imposter comes back and says, "Oh no, you didn't do a good job." But if you try to build a relationship and connect with the other person in front of you, then you build a scene together,
yeah.
like improv terms related. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing to do, right? Because I mean, I started the same way because I think we build the natural tendency is to build your brand inside out, right? Like
Yeah.
even I was not enamored by, but I would also lean on my methodologies because to me that was the way I
Hmm.
communicate what I did. But then I realized after a while, those words mean nothing to those people
No.
unless you can connect it to the problem that they have, in which
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like how you solve the problem is secondary. The first thing
Mm-hmm.
people look for is, do you even understand what I'm going through, right? That's the piece.
Hmm.
It's almost like you have
Yeah,
to think of it outside in, right? Like you said, you have to
that's
really
right.
sort of understand who your audience is, what
Yeah.
moment they're in, and then
Mm.
connect with that. And then only the methodology is secondary because it's almost
Yeah.
like they don't care how the sausage is made, right? As long as you can fix the problem.
Or just in coaching terms, also listen and be there for them. Um, Perhaps sometimes we don't need a fixer, we just need somebody else who understands, who shows empathy, who relates to the situation you're in.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, also the social work and the experience that I have with my studies, with also kindergarten and corporate world, but then also further building up my own business in Germany and going to different scenarios, different companies, organizations, finding myself alone in these situations, and then also finding the connection point with my participants in the workshop. That's always very true to me.
Yeah.
And I love that because then it's not only about me on stage, but trying to really doing meaningful work. Yeah. And that's why I'm there to help them instead of always trying to bring it from the outside into the inside. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the tough part is how do you get your messaging to connect for you before you show up?
Mm.
Because
Oh, yeah.
that's typically what prospects look for before they even talk to you. Because once
Yeah.
they, you get a real live conversation, it's much easier. But how does the messaging has to start speaking for you, and I think that's sort
Yeah.
of the trick that you sort of
Yeah.
have to learn. In
And
terms,
I'm still learning,
yeah.
and perhaps you can teach me more than I
I'm
know now.
on the same journey. But connected to that, I also wanted to ask you, because I'm very curious about this, because I want to talk about the word improv for a minute, right?
Mhm.
Now, I had a very different picture of what it was before I actually took a class. I was
Mm.
expecting sort of like comedy club, high energy, silliness, but
Mhm.
what I got was something much deeper, right? That could apply to not just business, but life. So I'm
Mhm.
curious, does improv serve as a door opener, or can it sometimes trap you in a category that feels smaller than the work you actually do in the room with people?
Yeah, so true. I think it's both.
Yeah,
So when I speak about applied improvisation, where you use the methodologies and the principles of improv in different scenarios, then yes, of course, you have people who say, I just wanted to have fun. I just wanted to play improv. What is this? But then you also have different people who say, well, you're just an improviser. I don't need you in my organization or in my company because it's only about fun or team building exercise or something. If you look through a different lens, then it's more about, as I said, like the deeper connection. Um, Using improv as a tool can help you to develop team building and so on, but so much more. You can have it teach you things for your life, kind of these, for example, let your partner shine, where you have a conversation with somebody else and you listen to each other, but then you also listen to me. And so we have this conversation together. Or Screw Up Happy, where you see mistakes as a gift and you can learn from and move forward instead of like shit happens all the time.
yeah, yeah,
And how you react to it is more important than just always referring back to it. So there are so many things, and as I said, then it can be a door opener and a key for so many things. But if you only see the lens of, oh, it's fun, then it stays fun, but it's also then very flat and
yeah.
very superficial. But if you let it happen that there are stories, that there are characters, that there are so many things to recognize and see in the games, in the exercises itself, then you don't really need any more. Then you feel very, very empowered after a session. And I think you also shared some insights on LinkedIn about an improv class where you also felt that energy afterwards happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like it does both, right? And that's to
Yeah.
me sort of the travesty a little bit. I would want, like, after my improv class, I wanted every corporation in the world to incorporate improv into their management training, because
Yeah.
I genuinely think it, to your point, it's not just, it's a fun sort of vessel, if you like, right? But
Yeah.
within that fun, there's really meaningful ways to connect with people, to open your
Mm.
perspective, to stop overthinking. Like, one of the
Yes.
biggest takeaways for me is like, you sit there and worry about, oh my God, what will Andrea think about what I just said? And then you realize Andrea doesn't really care what you said because she's busy thinking about herself or anybody else, right? Or vice versa.
Yeah.
So there was, and the
Well,
yes and philosophy of, like you've just mentioned,
yes,
building on things rather than
that's
tearing
right.
everything down. And I think the corporate world would really benefit from,
Yeah.
ingesting improv as part of whatever you want to call it,
And
cultural.
there's so many good things, and especially in the US and Canada, it's really huge improv and applied
Yeah,
improv. So yeah, they're always having these amazing conferences called Applied Improvisation Network, and where you can also jump in, and they have these open spaces where they share games and knowledge about how they use things for different settings and organizations. So it's really wonderful, and the community is very great.
yeah.
Really
But I think
supportive.
it's a productivity multiplier. That's the way
Yeah.
that's what I walked away with the biggest
Mm,
lesson, right? It's a great
yeah.
way to get people to work together better,
Yeah.
to get to better outputs, more, more
That's right.
stronger, more meaningful, and more diverse outputs, which I think benefits
Absolutely.
not just corporations, but society. So, you
Oh,
know,
yes. Yes, absolutely. And there are so many different theatre forms. Because I'm trained in theatre,
mm,
I know that there's not only improv out there, there's also theatre of the oppressed, who's focusing on the society. How can you change the society within the society and give citizens a voice that can change kind of the laws and also make people think about different situations that are happening in society. So that's also very powerful. But the work in the prison was related with biographies, and so you take the biographies and use them kind of for the storytelling and provoke the audience to think, okay, what is real, what is fake. So there's so many ways in using theaters. Yeah, finding your voice, and this is what brought me back to also now here in Galway, finding my voice here on my hero's journey. And that's also what I say now, is letting other people, my participants, my clients, my coaches, find their voice. Um, and that's how I also got to know Ruth through Creative Space, where we got to know each other. And I'm so thankful for that space because we can really explore and connect in a human way. And improv is so human. It's all about humanity, and uh, the laughs and the fun are coming out of this shared humanity.
yeah,
Kind of when you're always looking for a laugh from the audience. Keith Johnstone, who's the improv godfather, you might say, he always said the blockage for the improviser is always searching for the best. Like, I want to top it. I want to have the best laugh. But instead, we should kind of be ordinary and just take the things that are here and transform something and transform it into a story or into something human and that we can relate to. And when we relate to it, then we have the emotional connection. And perhaps there you can also have the marketing also included, where you see yeah, I resonate with it because it's connected to this emotion. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, and Ruth is how we met too, right? Through Creative Space.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I love, and the other thing I realized as you're talking is like, when I was doing my improv class for a while, I was trying to be funny and it didn't work.
Hmm.
And it's like you
Hmm.
said, when you just stop trying to be funny and just focus on the mundane things, you actually end up being funny because
Yes.
you're building and you're connecting dots without really
Yeah.
realizing it. And so I think, yeah,
Yeah.
there's, I think we should start a campaign to bring improv into classrooms, into universities, and into corporations.
Yeah.
So I think
Oh,
everyone
absolutely.
will benefit.
And I love doing it kind of
Yeah.
when I go into universities and then with that mindset, and then we end with knowing each other. Like strangers become friends at the end of the class
Yeah.
of each
Absolutely.
applied improv session. And yeah, that's the magic.
True. And it sort of brings down all the boundaries, right? In terms of
Yes.
language, whatever,
Yes.
color, this, that doesn't matter. You're just sort of like
No.
on a very innately human level you connect. And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Who
something
needs
else.
language? My
Yeah, I
favorite
know.
language is gibberish.
Yeah, very true. And if you think about it, we all start with gibberish when we're born, right? We all
That's right.
speak the same language, and then we're put on
Yes,
different paths and taught
absolutely.
to separate rather than come together.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I want to touch on another thing you just mentioned about helping people find their voice. Right, one of the things you told me on our prep call was that your imposter syndrome shows up and tells you, no, you can't talk about yourself, right?
Mm.
And yet you
Mhm.
spend all day helping other people find their voice and own their story. So tell me a little bit about, what is it about putting your own story out there that's so much harder than
Mm.
helping other people do the same?
Mm. Oh, deep question. Yeah, I think because sometimes your own beliefs stand in your way, and then it's hard to remember your story as well, when you let everybody else shine. So it's so good if you are surrounded, and creative space is that space for me at the moment. And I have had many spaces like this over the years, but I think it's so important that you are surrounded by people who see your value, who see your story as well. So you can really have this back and forth, that you see each other, and that's so important. Yeah.
Yeah,
So with that said, I think, yeah, it's always good to surround yourself with people who see you and
yeah.
who listen to you and hear you and want to hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is hard, you're right. I mean, like, and my
Yeah.
pet phrase now is you can't write the label from inside the bottle. And it's just
Mhm.
like I do this for a living. And yet, for myself, it's been so
Yeah.
difficult to actually do it. And I realize it's nothing to do with effort or, intelligence. It's just proximity because
Mhm.
when you're living, sitting, breathing inside something, it's
Oh,
very
yeah.
hard to separate and see that
Mhm.
distance. Right? So, and
Oh,
and I
yes.
agree with you. You need sort of spaces like creative space. I always say find your tribe
Yeah.
because you need
Yeah.
to sort of experiment and have people give you the constructive
Absolutely.
feedback and honest feedback.
Mhm.
To help you
Yes.
sort of start seeing what you just cannot naturally see.
No, that's right. And trial and error. You
Yeah,
you have to try out and fall and stand up again and do it again.
yeah,
Yeah, over and over again. And I think what helps me is really my passion, and for improv, for theatre, but mainly also bringing people together through the workshops and my work and coaching sessions, where we really focus on empowerment, mm, through creativity and fun. That's really nice. Yeah.
yeah. It is, and I love creative space. So. Now,
Mm,
the other thing I want to have to talk about is this phrase you used on our pre-call, which I mentioned in the intro, screwing up happily. Like, I love that.
mm,
So you told me it became a mantra during the pandemic, right? So for someone who's listening, who's terrified of making the wrong move, right? What does
mhm.
screwing up a happily actually look like on a regular Tuesday in your business?
Not to take yourself too serious. I think
Yeah.
that that's perhaps, in a nutshell. Um, yeah, as I also just mentioned, shit happens,
Yeah.
and the way we react to it is perhaps more important. So sometimes it hurts to screw up and to accept it. So this is where also acceptance and commitment therapy comes in, like the ACT, from my work. Uh, that where you use it to really diffuse from the situation and accept it and learn to say, okay, it happened and it was there, and it hurts, and then to move on and to say, okay, but not to take everything too serious, and to concentrate on the values you thrive, kind of the mission you have, and then, yeah, just go forward and say, okay, this was a lesson learned, and now I stand up and do it again, or do it differently, or choose another option, look for support. That's always something I think that is always forgotten as a solopreneur, that you can ask for help, that you can ask definitely someone, and reach out to them and say, could you just perhaps have a couple of minutes and talk with me or listen? And yeah, then it gets better.
Yeah, and for a long time, and maybe part of it is societal that you think asking for
Mm,
help is a sign of weakness, and it's not. It's
mhm.
actually a
No,
sign of strength, right? Because it says basically, I want to learn, I want to understand what's working, what's not working, and I think it's a
yeah,
critical muscle for solopreneurs, right?
yeah,
And going back to your
absolutely.
point, I love that improv point is sort of get over yourself, right? It's a very important thing you have to do. And also, it's
Yeah,
funny, right? Because for years I marketed brands, but there was
yeah,
separation. Like when I'm selling a CRM solution for IBM, if somebody doesn't buy it, I don't care. It doesn't affect me personally. But now I'm selling Nikhil Vaish. And if somebody doesn't
hmm,
buy it, then it's like, oh my God, they've
yeah,
rejected me. But it's not. It's just
Yep.
a product. You're selling something, and sometimes it's not the
Oh,
right
yeah.
fit, it's not the right time, and it's not a reflection of you being rejected personally, right? So I think
That's right. Yeah.
part of the process
Or
as an entrepreneur to sort of get there. Yeah.
or if you come back to the scenes, like an actor, an improv actor, you have so many stories and so many characters. So, do you really want to focus on to this one story, this one character, or are there many different ways you can show up, or many different stories you haven't known, and you can still build them and create them together? And it's so important to really trust each other also when you play improv scenes together. So find that person you can trust to build that foundation that you can, like, yeah, continue your work. And I take that mantra or so many lessons from improv into my solopreneurship um, to create beautiful scenes. And then this scene is perhaps for 2 years,
Yeah.
but perhaps this scene is just 1 minute. Who knows? So that's the magic of Screw Up Happy, I think, also just to focus too much onto one story.
True. I'm
Mm.
definitely going to be screwing up a lot more happily now as we move forward.
That's great. I'm happy to hear that.
So you made another great point during our prep call that in creative and theater work, you often have to be flexible and
Mm,
carry multiple gigs to survive, right? Now, a lot of
mm,
solopreneurs eventually sort of learn that same lesson, that one income stream and relying on that can be fragile or dangerous. So how have
mhm,
you learned to juggle different kinds of work without losing the center of what you do?
mm. I think because I'm doing it over and over again,
Yeah.
as I said at the beginning, that I just started this way, kind of from university and going into the theatre scene, theatre world, where you are taught this way that you have to do several gigs. And then you also mentioned that I studied jazz music, so this was also a lesson for me in itself because they always told us if you want to become a famous jazz musician, you can't live of only giving gigs or performances. You have to have education at the side. So, being a good jazz musician is also having different opportunities, different things. And that was always very exciting for me because then I thought, okay, I have the theater world, I have the social work world, and I have the jazz or music world. And then you can really juggle around and see, okay, this is good, and that. But it can also be very stressful. So
Yeah.
you should really prioritize what is important. And for me, yes, okay, at some point I had a family, and so my family became my priority. And then I chose theatre over music, and then music became more emotional and a hobby to me. So that was my journey in the end. But I don't know, for somebody else's, it's something else. So I think everyone has their own story again, their own
Yeah.
hero's journey. And this is at this moment it feels right, but perhaps in 10 years it's something else. So who knows? Yeah. And I always have this passion for music in my heart and theatre and for people. So I think that's always the core value, and that gives me strength and the direction. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's important, right? Because a lot of people tend to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Now, as much as you have to have different multiple gigs, multiple revenue streams, you should make sure that there's a connective tissue, right? And I think
Yes.
that's what you basically said. It's people and helping them find their voice. Now, whether it's through theater or jazz or ACT or improv, the center does not move in terms of what you're
No,
trying to do, right?
that's
And I
right.
think that's
Yeah.
the thing that gets lost when people are in
Hmm.
today's world of, the 30-second attention span world where
Yeah.
it's like, oh, this person did this. So I'm going to go try this now, this new CRM tool or this tool. But
Yeah.
you end up diluting the core of what you do. And that's where I think, people start to not
Mm-hmm.
get traction is
Mm-hmm.
every 3 or 6 months, they're distracted by a shiny object. So
Mm-hmm.
the key is have multiple revenue streams, but make sure the core of what you do is always embedded in each of those, right?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's really true. I see that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing which is interesting to me is you run workshops that tackle real stage fright, right? The
Hmm.
kind people feel before going on stage or in front of camera.
Hmm.
So if a solopreneur is sitting alone in their home office right now, about to
Hmm.
hit record on a video and feeling that same paralysis, that pit in their stomach show up, what's one improv technique or game someone could practice by themselves before they hit record to sort of get out of their own way?
Okay. So what I do for yourself, for your own, if you are alone in your living room or somewhere, then try to look through the room with three different lenses. The first one is you look through the room and name things around you, kind of mirror, picture frame, door, bag, something like that. So it's really neutral without any feeling. But please do it for several seconds, like 20 seconds or so. The second round is everything that you see is disgusting. So really disgusting. You don't want it to be here. So, ugh. So it changes from neutral to disgusting, like, ugh, mirror, ugh, door, ugh, picture frame. Okay, you get the picture. So also for 20 seconds. Then the third round is everything around you is so good. You love it. So you have the love sense, the love lens, sorry. And then you go around the room again for 20 seconds with a loving eye. Mirror, door, picture frame. And immediately you can also hear it in my voice. Your mind shift changes from this kind of anxiety, kind of what does Nikhil think of me now, to wow, amazing. I'm with Nikhil and giving an interview and we're having just a conversation and sharing time together. So immediately the mind shift is there. Yeah. And
That-
that's called a spacewalk.
Uh-huh.
And you can do that with participants kind of walking through the room, but you can also do it alone just by looking at things in the room. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Definitely going to use that. But
Oh, perfect.
but just for the
Another
record,
thing,
yeah,
and
correct.
another thing that you can use when you have friends and are on a Zoom call, or if you are with friends at the table or something, speak about a situation that happened where you think, "Ooh, that was nasty." Like the presentation I gave or the podcast interview I've given, something like that. And I know after our call, I will have a screw up happy moment for myself, like thinking of that because that's human. Um, and then think of it as a radio play in your head. So kind of switching from channel to channel. What are your actual thoughts on this situation? So that's really funny if you have friends over and they go like, "Ooh, that was nasty." Come on, you will do that. It's fine. Next time, or something like that. So you have the conversation out of your head. So this is where you go out of your head immediately and have a good laugh with friends and loved ones. Yeah.
That sounds like so much fun, actually, because I'm already thinking I'm going to do it, BBC News Hour style, because it's always the British style is always very droll, very dry, very matter of fact, right?
Yes.
Whereas then you can
Oh,
contrast that with, maybe, I don't know, different
that's
styles.
right.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
that's awesome.
Different genres,
Yeah.
different speakers, music, include music or something. So go wild.
That's true. And I guess on some level it distracts your brain, right? From
Yes.
dwelling on something. And then like you said, and there's science now behind this. You correct me if
Yeah.
I'm wrong, but happy thoughts lead to happy actions, right? And it's like
Mm.
visualizations actually start changing the patterns and things that you
Yes.
see and the way you behave and your actions. So there's a lot of
Absolutely.
evidence
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
neuroscientists can
yeah.
tell you like you build new ways to think differently, and then by doing it, by visualizing it, and to have the words spoken out, and then also perhaps perform it. Wow, that's something else. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. And just so I can preempt this for you, no need for a post-mortem after the podcast. So I can tell you you were great. It's been
Phew.
awesome.
That's
So
good
you
to
can
hear.
skip that part.
Perfect. That's
So
also very good to hear.
yeah, and I mean it. So last question before we go to our rapid fire round. So if you
Yes.
had to give one piece of advice to somebody wanting to start their solopreneur journey, what would you
Hmm.
tell them?
Go for it. No, that will be my improv intuition. Go for it. Yeah, perhaps sticking with that. If you enter a scene, then always keep your motivation. Kind of, why do you enter the scene? Why do you enter the stage? If you don't have a motivation and you just go for it, then you will feel lost. And the audience doesn't know what to do with you, and you won't know what to do with you. And your scene partner doesn't know what to do in this moment, how to create a scene together. So if you have that mantra, perhaps that's very visual, that's very helpful. And yeah, we also talked about this kind of that passion that you have, that inner core that is always there, um, not disrupting, not falling apart. It's always there, and then you have your motivation. Yeah, and keep to it.
Yeah, I love that, because also the thing with the scene is you could fall flat at one point in the scene, and then
Absolutely.
30 seconds later you could have the biggest laugh you've ever had, but you wouldn't get there if you didn't keep going, right? Similar to
No.
the solopreneur journey, you're going to have those flat
Yeah,
and highs, right? But you have to keep going to get to the highs. So I love that.
that's right. Yeah, and remember why you're there.
Yeah.
And why I also sometimes forget why do I do this? And it's always good to come back, and therefore I use the hero journey to think about my call, what's calling me forward. But also, when I think of improv, what do I love about it? And remember also the good things that happened in the past, but also the knowledge that I want to learn, that I haven't experienced. So I really want to go to Canada and do theatre, sport, and improv, and so on. So that is a bucket list in itself.
Well, definitely send me an invite when you get there. So
Oh,
I'd love to
I
be in
will.
the audience. So that brings us to a rapid fire round, just looking for like one word or one sentence answers now. So, what did improv teach you about business that business books often miss?
Mm. Oh God. Um, being true to yourself, being
Yeah.
honest.
One sentence you would say to your 18-year-old self crying in the kindergarten bathroom.
This isn't the end. Mhm.
Love it. If your inner critic had a costume, what would it wear?
The clown's costume, because
I
I'm
love it.
afraid of clowns.
Oh no, I didn't realize that. Okay, that's brilliant on many levels.
Yeah.
What is one thing you are done pretending to be good at?
Uh, one thing, speaking Oxford English. I'm not good
Well,
at.
we don't have that problem here in America. I always say it's
Perfect.
the American language we speak, not the English language. If your business were an improv game, what would it be called?
Oh, well, that's easy because I started off with Switch Impulse. And Switch is an improv game where you always give a presentation, and when somebody claps into the hands, then they have to switch characters, switch different roles, and keep the talk going. So the topic is still there, but you switch into different roles, different characters, and use what is there. So when you have the point of I don't know anything and I'm screwed up here, that you really dive in this creativity part of your brain, because you don't think about it, you just go for it. And That was my first name that I started in the pandemic, Switch Impulse. But now it's just Andrea Wodniok, my real name.
That's great. And that's actually a great way to end the show, because what you brought it back to was, with the Switch, you have the same core theme, but multiple revenue streams, right? So you keep going. So I
That's
love
right.
that. So Andrea, thank you so much. It's been such a fun conversation. And
Oh,
I
thank
hope
you.
everyone adopts improv after this.
Yes, me too.
Uh,
I encourage it. And just play and have fun and be childish. Yes.
and grow up happy. I think that's the best message.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Thank you, Nikhil, for
Thank you.
having me.
What I loved about this conversation with Andrea is that she took something that most people think of as playful, theatrical, silly, fun, and turned it into something deeply practical that we can apply to our solo businesses. My first takeaway is this: your business is not a fixed scene. Andrea described how improv is a place where you can switch characters, switch roles, switch scenes, all to keep the story moving. And I think that's a really great way to think about solopreneurship. Because when you're on your own, it's really easy to get obsessed over one offer, one sales call, or one failed launch. When something doesn't work, the story we tend to tell ourselves is, maybe I'm just not good at this. But here's what I want you to remind yourself of when a scene doesn't work. Sometimes it could just be that your timing was off, or it was the right offer given to the wrong audience, or that you just haven't worked long enough on the scene for the magic to appear yet. So if you're on a rough patch, don't confuse one bad scene with the entire play. I want you to step back and ask yourself one question: what am I actually here to help people achieve? Because if you remind yourself of that, you'll probably figure out the specific part of the scene that needs to be refined or rewritten. The second takeaway is this: multiple revenue streams are great, but they only work if they share the same spine. Andrea talked about how she does theater and social work and jazz and improv and coaching and workshops. Now, from the outside, that could feel like she's scattered herself across a lot of different things. But here's the thing: underneath all of it, she has a very clear through line. She helps people find their voice and reconnect with their story. So I encourage diversification. I think it's really important for a solo business to have that. But the part solopreneurs miss is there has to be a connective tissue across those revenue streams. If you just go and add a course or a workshop or a newsletter because someone else had one, or you saw something that was good, or a community offering, without that connective thread, honestly, you won't have a business. You'll just basically end up with a junk drawer. So flexibility is powerful for a solo business, but flexibility without a consistent center isn't strategy. It's really just distraction. The third takeaway is this: the tools you use to help other people are often the hardest to use on yourself. Andrea spends her days helping people get out of their own heads and find their voice. Yet she was honest about her own imposter syndrome that tells her not to talk about herself. And honestly, that tension, I felt it too. I get paid to help coaches articulate what their brand stands for, and yet I've struggled to do the same for myself. Now, here's the thing, and there is no way around this: the closer you are to the work, the harder it is to see. So if you're feeling frustrated that you can't articulate the depth and breadth of what you do in a clear and compelling way, you're in great company. And the answer isn't to stare longer at your screen or work harder on your own. It's to get out of the bottle and talk to someone who can see the patterns you're too close to see. My challenge to you this week is to practice Andrea's spacewalk exercise the next time you feel that pit in the bottom of your stomach right before any big moment, right? It could be before you hit publish on the video, before you give a keynote, or hop on a high stakes discovery call. Don't sit there, overthink it. Look around the room through 3 different lenses. First, spend 20 seconds naming objects completely neutrally: door, desk, chair. Then spend 20 seconds looking at those same things as if they were absolutely disgusting. And then finally, switch to the love lens and look at everything with deep appreciation, like you couldn't live without them. I know this sounds really silly, but that is the point. You are interrupting the spiral by shifting your mental state, and you're reminding your nervous system that this, whatever this is not a life and death situation. It's just a scene. Thanks for listening to Unfiltered Solopreneur. If this episode made you realize your brand still feels scattered, or you're just struggling to package your experience so clients instantly get it, let's fix that. I'm offering a limited number of free 45-minute brand clarity sessions. This isn't a hidden sales pitch. We're going to look at your messaging live, spot the friction, and define your next move. You can book your spot at clarity.boostsolo.com or through the link in the show notes. Until next time, keep breaking free from the corporate grind, and remember, your story is your most powerful asset. Live solo or die corporate.